I'm over here walking the beaches of El Salvador, and I'm thinking about my first trip here. It was in December 2023 when I got here. I'll tell you what, I felt the energy, I felt the optimism, I felt the hope in the air. And if you can remember during that time, it was a time where America was going through some real struggles. It was the last year of the Biden administration. I think it was like peak wokeness where the insanity had reached astronomical levels and was seeping into every aspect of our society, and where it was unclear and uncertain what America's future would look like. And in a lot of ways, it's still like that, but circumstances have changed and a vein of sanity has returned to America. But when I got here to El Salvador, it was the first time I felt a tangible feeling of hope and optimism. And this was a country that was in the dark, and it was very much now on the rise. They had a leader which they could look up to. The streets were safe once again. And there was this thought that better days were ahead. And you couldn't say the same thing for the United States. So when I got here, that energy was very infectious. And from December 2023, I came every month after that looking for a way to find a purpose here, to try to make a way of life here, to look for opportunities and a way to be part of the renaissance that I felt was taking place over here. And in June 2024, that's when I moved down here. And looking back on it, there was risk involved. I had to leave my hometown, leave my family, start over, build from scratch. It was expensive to make the move. And looking back on that journey, I realized that I don't think a lot of people would take that leap, because I think that for the most part, we've been indoctrinated to live in our comfort zone, to think small, to not venture off too far to the unknown, and to not bet on ourselves. And that's what I want to talk about today, is when to actually take the risk, when to bet on yourself, when to get out of your comfort zone and go on an adventure. That's another thing. I feel like adventure is a big part of a man evolving or maturing into his potential. I think it's what activates the primal archetypal energies within us. And a lot of that has been removed from society, removed from a man's upbringing. It used to be that we had rites of passages, that we had rituals which would help us, which would challenge us, and which would push us to become greater than what we were, and to somehow take us and our psyche to the next level. And I feel like a lot of that's been removed, and it needs to be brought back. And so that might be a different subject, but what I want to focus on today is when to take risks. Because I'm not talking about being reckless. I'm not talking about just risking money or time or energy or your life for nothing. I'm talking about taking calculated risks where you know what the downside is, but the upside is in an order of magnitude greater. These are asymmetric risks that one can identify, and they come around in life every so often. And as a man, I think it's really important that we learn how to identify them and go after them. Another way to calculate risks is also through betting on yourself. You know, there's this concept of the ikigai where it's like you do, you know, finding what you love to do, finding what you're good at, finding what you can get paid to do, and finding what the world needs, the value that the world needs. If you can hit all four of those, that's the sweet spot. And that's where, if you can make a move that gets you more to the center of those four circles, it's a Venn diagram of sorts, right? And if you could take risks that move you more towards the center of those four circles, I think those are risks to take. Those are risks where you bet on yourself. And that's kind of how I operated my whole life. So thinking about El Salvador, you know, as a country that was very much on the rise and still is and has a lot of growth potential, the reward for being successful here, I think, is 10x or 100x, right? Like, this country has a long way to go in terms of reaching its potential. And if you can build a business here, you have a long runway of growth. And so that's the first perspective that I had was, wow, you know, there's so much opportunity here that if I can find a way to be successful here, then, and build a business, then just by the nature of being here, you're going to capture all the growth that this country goes through. So that's an example of an asymmetric risk. Another example of an asymmetric risk is Bitcoin, for instance, right? If you understand Bitcoin and you understand its value proposition, and you look at the markets it's trying to disrupt, there's very much an asymmetric risk-reward situation that's evolved, especially now as it's become more and more legitimized, right? The likelihood of that bet playing out grows with each day. And so Bitcoin is another one of those things that is a asymmetric bet where the risk of downside is, you can calculate it. It's known. And the upside is theoretically unlimited. And so that's another thing where the bet you make is at least 10x to 100x what the risk would be. And then in terms of El Salvador, for me, this is a place that calls itself Bitcoin country. And that ethos is very aligned with what I love, my values, right? And it was a bet for me to move closer to the center of my ikigai. And so I guess that's my message for you guys here, just based off my experience. Two types of risks that you want to take. One where it's asymmetric, where the reward outweighs the risk by a factor of 10 or 20 or 100. And risks where you move more to the center of your ikigai, where you can find more fulfillment and more purpose and more success and more meaning in what you do and how you live. And here's the thing. When you shoot for the moon, or I think the saying goes, when you shoot for the stars, you can still land on the moon. Something to that nature, right? Don't quote me. But the basic idea is that when you go for big goals and you come up short, you still end up winning. And in a lot of ways, what I thought would transpire here in El Salvador hasn't worked out. But what I got in return has still been worth the journey. Like, I've grown in ways that I never thought I would. I've ventured out of my comfort zone. I've achieved more success in different ways, not monetarily, but through personal endeavors that I never thought I would conquer. And there are other personal victories that I've had here and that have really pushed me to a new level of achievement, of potential, of success. And so even though my goal for coming here was quite big and I haven't reached it yet, what I've got in the journey so far has made it well worth it, to give you guys understanding. And so that's going to be my message for today. Take risks. As men, we need to go out adventures. It helps us grow. It helps us mature. It helps us fill our potential. I feel like we live in a time and age where we are coddled, where we are used to instant gratification, where we don't embrace the struggle. And when you do, there is a lot of reward on the other side. I hope you guys are doing well. I hope you guys take care, and I will see you on the next one. Peace.